So throw down some rough bedding and wait out the cold. Your exposure won't go down while you're sleeping in the rough bedding, so you can sleep overnight until the morning when hopefully the weather will be better. Of course it doesn't always work. Hello my internet friends, Napyet here. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Frostfall and Campfire mods by Chesko. This video is going to be split into 3 parts. The first part will be an overview of the features and new systems added to the game. The second part will be a guide to getting started with the mod and what you can expect in a playthrough with these mods installed. And the third part will be some tips and tricks, in the case of Frostfall and Campfire, generally geared towards not dying. So quickly I'll go over what you need to install for these mods to work. They both work in tandem. You will need Frostfall and Campfire. You'll also need SKSE 1.7.3 or above. You'll also need SkyUI 4.1 or above. The links to all these mods will be in the description of the video. Frostfall and Campfire are available for the special edition, but without SkyUI and SKSE they function slightly differently there. But the main body of this overview will still be relevant if you're using the special edition. So without further ado, let's have a look at the features and new systems added with these mods. So what is Frostfall? Frostfall, through the introduction of a cold and wetness mechanic, adds a level of immersion into the game as you try to survive against the elements. Campfire, the companion mod to Frostfall, gives you a way to combat those elements, as you're able to create campfires and various equipment. So essentially they lend Skyrim a survival aspect, makes it very immersive as you travel around Skyrim and try to survive. So Frostfall's features need to be activated through the mod configuration menu. Give it a couple of seconds to start. Once it does, you'll be treated to a little bit of flavor text. In fact, one of the most impressive things about Frostfall I find is the amount of information the mod author has given to you in the form of tutorials and information as you go. Starting with the Survivor's Guide to Skyrim, which will appear in your inventory. And it's there for information should you desire it. Both Frostfall and Campfire are highly customizable. One of the most important questions you need to ask is what you want the outcome to be should you reach maximum exposure. There are 3 options. Nothing happens, you're rescued and appear somewhere randomly in another part of Skyrim, or you die at exposure. Nothing happening will mean you still suffer the negative effects and debuffs associated with exposure. You can configure things to make them slightly easier or harder, depending upon your preference. Disable fast travel and disable waiting while outdoors are nice immersion options, should you really go for a hardcore immersion playthrough. Likewise, Campfire also gives many options for you to tinker around with. Certain behaviours when players are inside tents and where you can set up your tent. But one of the most notable features is that Campfire integrates with various follower mods, so your followers will interact with the campfires and tents that you create. So having a look at some of the new UI elements that the mod adds to the game, in the centre there the yellow bar gives an indication of the ambient temperature in my current surroundings. Very cold when it's in the centre. It will spread out as the temperature gets warmer around you. The most important indicator is in the top right. It's filling with blue there. That means I'm getting very cold. As that gets further to the left, I will potentially start to freeze and die if I have that set, or I will succumb to exposure, let's say. The bar underneath is wetness. If you get wet, you get cold easier. So to show you those 2 bars go crazy, I'm going to do something very silly, which is jump into the freezing harbour of Windhelm, and you'll see my wetness will increase. And there we go. It took a little while to register there, but you can see that the wetness bar is full and my exposure is full. I'm now freezing to death. There I go. Another way of keeping track of your temperature and wetness is the weather sense ability, which you can set with a hotkey or use as a power, I believe. Let's use that now. Up in the top left there, 14% exposure. I'm currently dry as a bone, and the air is frigid and deadly. Every piece of armor and clothing in the game now has a warmth and coverage mechanic. Warmth corresponding to your relative ability to keep out the cold, and coverage is about keeping out the wetness, with the relative ratings being logical. So for instance, fur is better at keeping out the cold than leather. Leather is slightly better at covering your body and keeping you dry. There's also a suite of items that you can craft on the go, such as arrows, armor, which you craft from the pelts and skins that you find on animals in the wild, and other utility items like the snowberry extract, which allows you to swim in frigid water. Spells also have new utilities. Some fire spells help to keep you warm, for instance, whilst frost spells add to your exposure and can be more deadly. There are also unique spells to Frostfall, such as Bask, where your exposure is reduced by 20 for 30 seconds, and many more for you to discover. There are also backpacks that are very immersive, and they show you some of the items that you have in your inventory, such as torches and the axe that you carry around for chopping wood. And finally, there are 2 skill systems that are accessed via the campfire. That's Firecraft for Campfire and Endurance, which corresponds to Frostfall. Talk about those a little bit more in the next section. So fire is now our friend, and any source of heat will register on your character. But in order to get really warm, we need to go inside or be inside a tent. You'll notice as you warm up, the bar turns from blue to a nice glowing red. For the purposes of this guide, I'm only going to use the skills and equipment that are added by Campfire. But what I'm going to do could be negated by using gold and vendors to buy the resources that you need. But going out into the wilderness and surviving seems like the best way to demonstrate the mechanics involved with Campfire and Frostfall. So the first thing we need are resources, and the main way that you gather the wood that you need for camping and some of the tools is the harvest wood skill that you'll have bound to a hotkey. We can harvest dead wood around us and also branches. And branches you'll have to gather first because those are needed to create an axe in order to chop the dead wood. Before venturing out, it's probably a good idea to prepare. Gathering wood and gathering branches takes time, and you don't want to be in the middle of a snowstorm or out in the cold night having to forage, because you won't have the time before you die. So I like to do that in a kind of an open area that's near a town. I'll just mention at this point, one of my personal favourite items in Campfire is the walking stick. It acts as a shield, you use it to block, but also it adds stamina. I think it's a really characterful object for someone wanting to really get into these immersion mods and the idea of surviving in the wild, a walking stick. And you craft that with the dead wood. So once you've got your dead wood and a few branches together, you're ready to set out. To be on the safe side, I say about 10 pieces of dead wood will probably be more than enough to get a decent fire going and have some to spare. So we're going to head out with those resources and find a place to set up our first camp, which is also a hotkey ability, build campfire. There are certain places you can't build the campfire, but we don't have any problems out here. So find a spot that you like and drop down the campfire. I'm not going to go step by step here because the mod has a very nice tutorial for the first time you do this, but in brief, you have a couple of options of how you can get the campfire started. You can use those branches that you gathered, you can turn dead wood into wood shavings and light the campfire that way. You can also use destruction magic, which is a characterful way of doing things. I like to light it manually because I like the animation, I like the sound and the idea of cracking flint and stone in the middle of a cold winter. The first order of business once you've got your campfire up is to get some warmer clothes for yourself, which will involve a lot of hunting. One of the cool skills that helps with this is the survival skill Instincts, which can help you track creatures. It also helps in other aspects of the game. You can see the life essence of characters basically. Kind of cool. You need quite a lot of pelts to create all the fur armor that Campfire adds to the game, and you'll probably have to make several hunting trips, running back to the campfire to get warm again as you hunt packs of wolves for their pelts. Turn the pelts into fur plate and the hide lace and gradually craft your armor. Ideally you want coverage in every armor slot, and by the time you've done that you'll be a lot more capable of surviving and staying away from the campfire longer. All this time you'll have not been able to get really warm because what you really need is a tent. In order to craft a tent, you first need the tanning rack, which is crafted with dead wood. Then once you place it around your campfire, you can access it and it'll allow you to create some additional items, such as the tent. This is the most resource intensive thing, requiring 2 leather and 6 fur plate to create the small fur tent. But once you've got that and you put it down, you really have got a home away from home. You can get properly warm. You can even place a cooking pot to craft the vanilla recipes. You can cook on the campfire itself. So even if the vanilla recipe calls for salt to cook up meat or something, you can always cook the meat that you find. And if you have a needs mod where you need to keep eating, that's really, really handy. All the while that you've been doing this, you'll be gaining experience in the new skill systems through creating campfires and surviving in the cold. There are 2 new skill trees added, and these are accessed by clicking on your campfire and choosing skills. There is Firecraft, which is to do with your ability to create fires and gather resources, also modify things like the walking stick. And then there's Endurance, which is to do with surviving the cold climate. And there are lots of skills to explore, some of them really cool, like the ability to meditate in really harsh weather and survive. The skills mixed with the new items and armor really gives you a sense of progression. So those are the basics of getting started with Frostfall and Campfire. Once you've got those skills, a tent, some fur to keep you warm, you're really ready to tackle the harsh climate of Skyrim. The elements coupled with ice-wielding mages can be deadly with Frostfall installed, so caves are your friend. You can always nip in, warm up, and then head back out. Hopefully the mages will be gone. Torches are also useful. The tiny bit of warmth from a torch can be the difference between life and death. Always keep a lockpick with you. There are farmsteads and small houses dotted around Skyrim that you can always pick a lock and dart within. You might have to put up with irate residents.
Guards, help! Trespasser!
But just treat it as an opportunity to practice your block skill. That's what I do. Goats! They're everywhere, but people don't like you slaughtering them. Wait until everyone has gone to bed. Goat hide is not as good as a wolf pelt for creating the fur plate that you need. You need 2 goat hide, but still. So we've seen how setting up your tent can be resource intensive. That's where rough bedding comes in. When you're caught out in the middle of nowhere with no tent, it can sometimes save your life. All you need is a wolf pelt or a couple of goat hides. You turn that into fur plate and then you can make the rough bedding, which you can throw down and wait out the cold. Your exposure won't go down while you're sleeping in the rough bedding, so you can sleep overnight until the morning when hopefully the weather will be better. Of course it doesn't always work. So thank you for watching this spotlight and guide. I hope you found it useful. Just a reminder that these mods are by Chesko, and links to the relevant pages and websites devoted to these mods can be found in the description. If you want to see more videos like this, please let me know by liking the video or leaving a comment. Also, you might consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd like to watch my own faltering first steps with Frostfall and other mods, a link is coming up on the end screen to my ongoing Let's Play series of Skyrim, which focuses on immersion mods like Frostfall and Campfire. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
Moving.